and just not letting anyone out. Well, thank you so much for choosing this session. I know that you have a lot of really important other sessions that you could be attending. So it's an honor and a privilege to be able to spend the next 45 minutes or so with you. My name is Elise Stoddard-Cruz. I'm the Managing Director of Leadership Development at American Farm Bureau. And I have my very much more talented than me colleague, Jordan Henry. I'll let her introduce herself.
And hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Henry. I serve as the Director of Leadership and Organizational Training at AFBF. A lot of my world is getting to come and hang out with states, whether it be some of these conferences that you have now or that you'll have throughout the year, and dive into some really cool leadership training. So I'm going to hand it over to Elise to dive into this great topic of leadership succession planning and what it looks like for you as a County Farm Bureau leader.
So how many of you know why you chose this session? Yeah, kind of have an idea of why you chose leadership succession planning. All right, typically that's the case, right? And we have these reasons, these catalysts of times or spaces, or maybe a change in Farm Bureau that happens that we're like, should probably maybe either beef up our leadership pipeline or start thinking about strategically figuring out who's going to be the next person in our leadership role. So we don't have a clicker, so Jordan's going to be my clicker. Already pretty bad. There we go. So we have a couple of objectives. One of them is really easy. The other two get sticky. The first is that we'll uncover the purpose of leadership succession planning. You'll probably have a pretty good idea of why it's important, but we'll talk about that just a little bit. We'll define the impact that you can make in your own county farm bureau. So whatever that looks like, we'll also give you tools to help define what leadership legacies look like for others in your county farm bureau. And then finally, we'll talk about actual action steps that you can take to help that leadership pipeline and secure the next generation of leadership in Farm Bureau. So leadership succession planning is the process of identifying and securing, developing these new leaders to replace the old ones, right? That's essentially why we're here. But this is just something that I got online. It's not the end all be all definition of leadership succession planning. So what I'd like for each of you to do, if you're comfortable, is turn to someone next to you and just evaluate this description. Do you think that it is accurate? And do you think that it needs any more oomph, any more juice? And if so, what would you add to it? All right, so check this out. What would you add to it? Give about 30 seconds to have a conversation with someone next to you. Go. All right, as you finish up those conversations, some of them happening in your mind, that's how I operate too, that's totally fine. We have some handouts, so feel free to use the front as a note page, and then the back end will have some additional challenges for you later on. So what are we thinking? Do we like this definition? Do we think it stinks? I didn't write it, so you can't hurt my feelings. What do we think?
My good friend Maurice and I were talking, and we were thinking that maybe
yeah.
adding in some infrastructure or future plans for them to take step foot in. Otherwise, you're just kind of giving them the look and saying, see ya, and sticking around to really kind of help guide them where they need to be.
Ooh, I love that. So like maybe one extra step of not just replacing the current leaders, but supporting them. That's awesome. Anyone else? Yeah.
We added educating and training.
Love that. Awesome.
Not just picking them, but telling them what they have to do. Right.
Yes, definitely. Great. So I think we're all on the same page. That lines up to me, and that makes sense. And I think that we all understand why leadership succession planning is important. So let's move on to the sticky stuff. Leadership succession planning is only one part of the membership journey cycle for Farm Bureau. And in order for one of these things to be successful, the rest of them have to be at least on the right track. They can't be stagnant and they can't be too sticky. So we need strong member programs, volunteer engagement, membership recruitment, and succession planning. Which one does Farm Bureau spend the most time on most of the time? Membership what? Recruitment. Yeah, we need more members. We need more members. We're running out of money. We need more members. Well, what if the rest of it sucks? It's going to be really hard to recruit new members when member engagement isn't there and when leadership development is non-existent. And when leadership development is non-existent in our leadership and membership life cycle, then people aren't going to want to step up to be leaders. Because I think, like someone said, a couple of people alluded to, it's like telling someone they're in charge and then leaving. All right, have fun. And we do that in Farm Bureau quite a lot. It's not just necessarily Farm Bureau, other volunteer organizations do it as well. But I think the culture of Farm Bureau lends itself to doing it a little bit more often, which is fine. So all 4 of these pieces of the membership life cycle, important. The one that we'll focus on today is obviously leadership succession planning. When we talk about leadership succession planning, it's very, very easy. And I've sat through many succession planning sessions about how to tell people they should quit. And that's not what this is. All right. Maybe 1 or 2 hints or tips, but the whole time is not going to be talking about how to push people out of your county farm bureau. We need to change the thought process around how we have these conversations with leaders in our farm bureau whose time might be up by talking about their legacy and what legacy they want to leave. And so the easiest way to do that is to talk about our own legacies first, and then we'll move on to others. I say it's easy. It's not that easy to talk about your own legacy, but you seem like very competent people, so we're going to give it a try. I want you to look at these prompts. What do you want to be remembered for? How do you want people to feel? What do you want your legacy, at least at Farm Bureau, to be? I asked these questions to a group of Farm Bureau leaders kind of from across the country, and I had 3 really interesting and different, but I thought very kind of cool answers. The first was from Morgan Norris. I don't know if any of you had the pleasure of meeting her. She was the AFBF YF&R committee chair during 2020, 2021. And she hoped that she was remembered by steadfast leadership through a pretty challenging 2020. Gosh, I want to say 2022 so badly already. I'm ready for 2021 was 2020 in a wig. I'm ready to let's just move on. So I thought that was really good. Steadfast leadership is what kind of stuck out to me there. Sherry Saylor, who was the former AFBF Women's Committee chair, talked about hoping that her legacy was fulfilled by the next women, the next generation of folks to step into leadership roles all around Farm Bureau. And I liked that one too. A county Farm Bureau president who wished to remain anonymous. If you guys come up with a better one, then I'll replace you in the slideshow. I like this, though. It said that I hope my legacy includes welcoming others into the Farm Bureau family. I want my volunteer work as Farm Bureau leader to be remembered by the risks that we took as a county, both small and large, and the way that our annual meeting transformed from a small business meeting into a community-wide celebration of success. Awesome. That's some actual, really good stuff, meat and potatoes stuff that I was really impressed by. I thought it was cool. So ask you these kind of prompting questions. What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your time in Farm Bureau to look like? And how do you want your legacy to live on after you? Take the next minute, kind of brainstorm. I know it's going to be personal. It's going to be different for everyone. And jot down on that front page of your handout, maybe just a couple of takeaways. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your volunteerism legacy to look like after you're gone? After you're done kind of jotting that down on your own, spend about a minute doing that, then we can turn to a neighbor and answer the same question. Cool? Go for it. All right. Let's wrap up those conversations. Who'd be willing to share? If you're not ready to share your legacy, that's fine. Who'd be willing to share their partners? Or maybe just what you talked about, what you've been kind of noodling on. Can I ask you to speak into the microphone for our friends online?
Maurice Jones, Harford County Farm Bureau president. One thing I wanted to do, and it's just slow. It's like ripples in a pond. It's just so slow, but I'm a small farm, and a vegetable grower. And so I'm very small compared to the big grain guys, and started with nothing. And I want people to know that you can start with nothing farming and become very successful. And so it's very, how do you purvey that,
Just like that.
Yeah.
Just how you said it was great.
Well, that's what I would like, I'm not ready for legacy though.
No, yeah.
Dad's 93, maybe when I'm 95.
We'll talk about it then. Well, I'll come back then. All right. What about over here? Conversations that happened.
Well, I was saying that I was lurking because I'm with the State Association of Conservation Districts, who also has a big need for succession planning on our boards. And I'm thinking about how that this is great information for them to chew on too. But I think, our big thing, and I would want to be a part of that, to be defined by my time spent connecting partners to enable them to do important work. So.
Thank you. We'll do one more from over here. Great.
I just said I want my work with Farm Bureau to be defined by a willingness to volunteer and to share any of my knowledge and skills with anyone who showed a desire to learn about agriculture and the benefits of Farm Bureau membership.
I love that. It's almost like you had more time to think about that. Did you sneak in here early? No, that was great. That was great. I think that when we talk about leadership, we look at and our legacy of leadership, we take a very finite and kind of one-dimensional look of Farm Bureau succession planning to another level. It's a little bit more dynamic when we can talk about what kind of legacy you want to leave as a leader, rather than it's time for you to get your butt off of the board. Right. And sometimes those conversations that lead to a tough conversation can start with us discussing what we want our legacy to be. Right. And we also want to leave a positive legacy. I think a general consensus with that people want to leave people wanting more. Right. There is no good time or right time to step off a Farm Bureau board. It's kind of like having a baby. Once you think you're ready, it's like too late. The ship's passed. Right. But sometimes in county Farm Bureau succession planning, we need to have candid conversations with each other way before it's even time to start thinking about stepping down. And talking about how we want our legacies portrayed, I think is a really interesting kind of frame to do that through. So Jordan, you go ahead. So it's time to start thinking about it. Even if you just got on the board, it's time to start identifying people who might be able to replace you one day. And a good exercise that I recommend us doing is essentially it's a needs assessment. It's figuring out where the gaps in leadership are for your county Farm Bureau. So on the second page of this little handout, it has future. So what skills, what knowledge, what expertise do you want serving on your county board in 3 to 5 years? So don't think about your county Farm Bureau board right now. Think about in 3 to 5 years, what do you want to be doing? What kind of cool stuff do you want to be accomplishing? Do you want to be talking more about technology, or do you want to be reinvested into your community even more than you already are? So where do you want your board to be in 3 to 5 years? What skills, expertise is going to be necessary to accomplish that? And then the second step is what's currently on your board. So kind of do a self-audit, self-assessment. If you're not currently sitting on your county board, you're just here for funsies, then we can have a conversation about what this exercise can look like for you. But if you're sitting on right now, think about that. So where do you want your board to be and who is currently there, and stop before we get to the gaps. Cool? Awesome. Go for it. steps of leadership succession planning. Go for it. We have identified these steps as far as big kind of bucket items that you can do to help prepare for the next generation of leadership in your county farm bureau. Prepare, identify, ask, transition, and then finally follow up. So if you want to take notes, just do it in the margins of your of your handout. That's totally fine. Let's look at prepare. Preparing should happen years before you even consider leaving the County Farm Bureau board, because in order to prepare to leave, what's in your head needs to be written down onto paper. There are so many county farm bureaus across the country that are operating right now inside the head of one or two people. And while that's wonderful, two things could happen. They could get hit by a bus and, their county farm bureau is out of luck, or they could win the lottery and move to Tahiti, and then their county farm bureau is out of luck because they're not around anymore. We need to start preparing by taking down all of the minutes, which is obviously the governance stuff that you should be doing anyway, but all of the strategic plans and the annual plans that you have, program of activities that you have. Also, if you do something and it stinks and it's not successful, we need to write down why it stunk and it was not successful, not just never do this again, because then guess what? Someone's going to be like, we should try that again. So writing down your thoughts in almost a diary format of what went well, what didn't go well to certain activities, very important. Things like that need to be down on paper needs to happen at least 12 months before you decide that you're going to step off. So while you should be thinking about it years in advance, we all know that Farm Bureau is extremely cyclical. It's almost like your annual meeting to annual meeting season is your year of Farm Bureau. So 6 months isn't going to cut it when it comes to writing things down so that the next person is successful in their job. They need a full year of kind of backup support. So 12 months is what we like to say. Step 2 is identify. Who can actually fill your shoes? Who are the people either in Farm Bureau right now or strong external candidates who you think might be interested in joining the board? It's important to note that it's very rarely your role to pick someone, like you will be the president next, right? Because you don't have that power. They need to be elected and all that fun stuff. But you do have the power to identify strong candidates and to get them ready and prepared to run for a position on the board. So things that you can do to keep your eye out for these types of folks are, number one, look and see where the other leadership in agriculture in your community is. So you said that a lot of people on your board serve on other boards. A great way to pluck them out of organizations like that, or leaders who are not on boards of other organizations, but are active in other organizations. We do this all the time. Farm Bureau is totally happy when one of the trainers or one of the leaders that we train up to be rock stars and awesome, they go off to serve on the soybean board or the agritourism board or other organizations. That's great because the cross-pollination of ideas and all that good stuff. So it's okay. Don't feel like you're poaching them, and just be nice about it. But we can look to those other organizations for help when we're trying to build our boards. Also, school systems, so agriculture teachers, extension agents, and other types of educators are also really good candidates to serve in kind of a board capacity. Whether or not they are like true farmer members are going to be dependent on what your county bylaws say, but those are sometimes really good folks to have kind of in the conversation. Young farmers and ranchers seems like the most obvious place to look for new blood, but sometimes we miss them, right? Especially right now, we are missing kind of a big generation of YF&Rs who haven't been involved in Farm Bureau since maybe a YF&R program died out in their county. So look for the middle-aged people, maybe the kids that are starting high school and maybe, fresh out of the house. Those are the types of people that we want to see come back to Farm Bureau boards. You obviously have to ask them whether or not they are interested. Can't just say that, although you may have had that experience, that maybe one of you was voluntold to serve on a board. That happens in Farm Bureau quite a lot. But you have to ask them, make them feel special by telling them about the potential that you see in them. And it's not blowing up their ego because you actually want these people to serve on your board, right? So you need to tell them specifically why you want them to consider serving on your board. Oftentimes it's as easy as making a phone call or taking someone out to lunch and kind of describing what your experience serving on a county farm bureau board is, so they feel a little bit more comfortable doing the same thing. And then just allowing them to ask questions about what it looks like. I think it's my favorite statistic to share. I learned it in church like 5 years ago, and I still talk about it all the time. So people are 3 times more likely to show up to church if you promise to meet them at the door and sit with them. 3 times more likely to show up rather than just inviting someone. And I think the same thing is true for Farm Bureau. If we promise that we're going to be with someone through the process, sit down with them during the actual meeting, it's going to be a lot more inviting to them than just saying, you should come to our county board meeting. That, of course, county board meetings can sometimes be a little tedious, and we want to make sure that they feel welcome and warm and fuzzy. Cool. 4 is transition. So what can be done to actually complete the transition? Once someone is elected to the board, whatever that looks like, depending on your bylaws, you want to make it a really smooth transition. So that means not ghosting them. Ghosting is a term that we've learned recently, means just, disappearing and never talking to someone ever again. We don't want to ghost the people who are on the newly elected county board members. We want to stick around and be available when they need to ask questions. We can do that in a couple of different ways, but the 2 that I would like to share with you are, number 1, utilizing your field staff. So your State Farm Bureau staff are going to be really good connectors of information and ideas. So the transition they can help out with, but then also the resource that I shared, Farm Bureau University, has some really good transition documents that are available for free that you can fill out. And then finally, last but not least, the follow-up. Follow-up's great because it sets an expectation that's not going to be uncomfortable for anybody. I was going to ask who here, but I won't put anyone on the spot. I have personally seen many, many times county farm bureau presidents who technically give up their title, and now we have a new county farm bureau president, but they show up to every single meeting. They're breathing down the neck of the new president, and they can't just kind of let them do their thing. And that's what we want to avoid. When there's a transition of power, because this is America, it should be healthy and free and without much issue. So you need to set up expectations about what that transition and follow-up is going to look like. Oftentimes, it's a once a month check-in for the first 3 months to make sure everything's going smoothly and then kind of fading away. Oftentimes, it can be a phone call. You want to, if you're comfortable saying, hey, text me anytime you have questions or call me anytime you have questions, that's even better. But setting up some like formal expectations about what the follow-up and the relationship between the new board member and the old board member is super helpful and healthy, because both sides can sometimes get a little needy at points. We just want to establish really clear boundaries. So we have an additional exercise for you. I have Jordan pass these out. And this is where it gets real. This is where we're identifying potential board members to replace you or other people on your board. Now, for privacy's sake, and I know there are people here on different thing, and I understand. So if you just want to write their initials or maybe draw a picture, a smiley face of someone. So what was that? Snoopy. Yeah, whatever that looks like. That's totally fine. But just start brainstorming about the people that you might want to reach out to, might want to have these conversations with. So this is going to be real quick. Let's do about 30 seconds. But I want you to think about real people in your community that you might want to chat with when you get home. All right. I wanted to point out the last line that says ways to get them involved now. I think that's really important because once we identify someone that we want to serve on the board, it's going to be pretty useless to identify them and then not be able to plug them into Farm Bureau in some meaningful way. I say meaningful because oftentimes we invite people to our annual meeting to just sit there and that's fine. But to really enroll and engage a new volunteer leader, we need to give them something specific to do. And when we say specific, yours are so bubbly and so wonderful and so engaging. I think you would be perfect at selling raffle tickets at our annual meeting. Do you think you could do that for us? Sure. Thank you so much. There we go. Gave her $1 before that. But being as specific as possible, giving people a specific reason why you're asking them, following up with a specific task that you want help with, plugs them into your county farm bureau, hopefully in a little bit more of an engaging way than just kind of general engagement. We want you to be a board member. The other thing that I want us to kind of walk home with is this, the 3-circle model that's at the bottom. You can move on. We're kind of done with that. The 3-circle model, it says orientation, education, and involvement. Why are those 3 things in a circle Venn diagram? Is it a Venn diagram when there are 3 circles? It still is? Okay. Thank you. I had a very confident yes and a few confident no's. So I'm going to let you guys figure that out later. I'm pretty sure it is. So why are there 3 circles in this Venn diagram of new board member recruitment? Why do you think that we chose those 3 things? Yeah, exactly. Now, what's the difference between orientation and education?
The organization. What is the purpose of Farm Bureau? What do we do? That orientation is training that person to actually be a member of the board in a leadership role.
Totally. Right on. Education, Farm Bureau staff can do for you. That's why we're here, how we exist, and maybe some tips and tricks about how to be a good board member. Orientation is how to be a board member, and that needs to happen by the rest of the board. So everyone kind of needs to be on board with this orientation setup of your new county board member for sure. And then also involvement. Board members are the happiest when they're involved. They're the happiest when they're engaged, and they're the happiest when they are volunteering their strengths most of the time. So when we identify people based on their strengths and what they're good at and how they can help your county farm bureau move forward, it's going to be good for us because we get the strengths of those good people, but also it's going to keep them engaged and enrolled and more likely to volunteer those strengths the majority of the time. There are a lot of people who, once they're on a board, not a lot of people, there are some sad people who, once they're on the board, they're there because it's the right thing to do and they're serving selflessly. And that's like all well and good. But if we have people who are selected based on their strengths and where we want to go in the next 3 to 5 years, those are the types of people that are going to be engaged more fully. Those are the people that we want. So that being said, I have a picture of our last, I guess they're kind of old now, but they used to be our Young Farmers and Ranchers committee at the AFBF level, just as a visual reminder that there are tons of leadership, of strong people, leaders all around the country that are waiting for their chance to shine on a county board, and that it's up to us to find them, identify them, and ask them to do it. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Also give you about 3 minutes of your time back so you can sneak out and get a bubbly water before anyone else. But we're happy to be here. So thanks for having us. Bye.